Welcome to Collection Chronicles, the podcast that brings the world of collections closer to you. Today we don't have Carly with us.
Oh,
That's our
sadness.
first announcement, yeah. But we have Tanya.
Hi. I'm keeping it simple. I
You
got
won't?
reamed out because of the whole hello thing.
So now you're not doing the foreign.
Well, until I could think of something.
Okay, we'll have a list. And with us today is Mike Andrews. Hi, Mike.
Hello, hello.
Mike is our new managing partner at Go Beyond Collection Agency, and we thought that it would be a good idea to bring him on board with the podcast.
It's kind of my initiation, I guess. Is that?
It is. It is.
Okay.
Now, we don't have bongs in the studio,
Okay. That's good.
but we've been laughing for the last 20 minutes.
This is true.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Mike has a long history in collections. 19 years, you said?
Yep. Just close to 19 years. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time in collections. You're a
I think
veteran.
That's too long. Yeah. I still have hair in my head too, which is.
This is true. Yeah, I realized that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange.
I'm surprised.
Normally, if you see collectors, that have been in the business for 20, 30, 40 years, they had a heart attack, they don't have a family, they don't have hair.
They look like a cold cup of coffee.
Yeah. Pretty much living on the border of insanity. That's pretty much.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I know you also have been involved in jewelry, of all things.
Really?
You know what? That's right. Prior to my career in collections, we had a jewelry store business and a very different type of business, absolutely. But that's in my earlier years, that's what we had. We had a family jewelry business.
Yeah, and from what I know, and I don't want to go off on a different tangent, but I am.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just talk in front of the mic.
Okay, I'm not talking into the mic.
You're talking out to the side of the mic.
Okay. So I know that you guys had 4 stores or something like that, or what?
We actually had 3, but we were in the midst of opening up a 4th in Woodstock, and it fell apart. But my family owned it since I think they started in the 20s, actually. So a long history in the jewelry business.
That's crazy. Like
Multi generations.
was it like a pawn shop or like it's like straight jewelry?
It was a high-end jewelry store.
Wow.
It's called Andrews Jewelers. If anybody has lived in Hamilton since the 1980s, they would know of us. We were very well established in the downtown core and had a lot of loyal clientele. And that's a step back in the past. Absolutely.
Holy, I didn't know this about him at all.
You know what? Mike
That's
still has
crazy.
a license.
Does he?
I think
gemologist. Yeah. I can. It's been a while since I've done it, but we used to do appraisals on gemstones and identifications of gemstones and all that fun stuff.
Jeez.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Talk about multifaceted.
And that's what I find in the collection industry, because no one here actually grows up wanting to be a collector.
No.
Yeah, we said this many times. Like,
Yeah,
nobody just wants to do it. Yeah.
It doesn't happen. So you've got all these people that come into the industry and they have all these specializations and different sort of expertise. And it's just really interesting. That's why I thought I would talk about it.
Yeah. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting that one. So
He does his research before interviews. Like he comes with a whole list of stuff. It's preparedness.
You're just afraid what else I'm going to say.
I know. Jeez.
So Mike is involved in our paralegal side and the legal side of our business, and I think today we should concentrate on that because a lot of listeners are interested in how collections and legal actions complement each other and work together. So I just wanted to ask you about the legal aspects of collection. Generally, people don't know the difference between a legal action and collection activity. Can you tell us what the difference is? I mean, we know, but the listeners might not know.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, there's certainly somebody lists an account for collections. They basically want to leave it with us, and they assume that we handle everything. But in actuality, there's two parts to it. There's the collection portion, which obviously is the goal, to try to collect the account in a voluntary way. Accounts are put on credit files, and in many cases, they're collected. However, the situations that arise when there's disputes, or in some cases where the person is just adamant they're not going to pay, then the next final stage is legal action. And I sort of come in on that end of it, and we don't just rush to do any legal work. I think we have to be discerning on each account, because at that point there's costs, and our clients have to pay extra monies, and we don't want them throwing away money, good money after bad. So we have to do our due diligence, and part of our job is to do some investigation. Is it collectible? If we go through the process and spend the money and get a judgment, are we going to actually be able to turn that into money? And I think that's kind of where we do research. We find out where the person's employed. We find out if they have assets, bank accounts, a whole host of things. Do they own property, things of that nature? And then once we've checked all the boxes, then we can safely approach our clients and say, hey, listen, they're not going to pay in the collection stage, but if you are willing to retain our legal counsel, we can file a claim, get a judgment, and we should be able to. Nothing's of course guaranteed, but we should be able. A good chance we will collect the monies, because we've found some assets and revenue streams we can use. So yeah.
Is there any insecurity from clients when you approach them for legal action? I mean, I would assume yes. But
there is. I think when somebody lists for collections, I think the motivating factor is, hey, listen, it's not going to cost me anything unless you collect. So it's a last stage ditch effort on their end. They don't want to lose any more money. They've already lost so far the 100% of the debt. Right. So they give it to us, and with that premise in mind. Now, at the end of the day, if we can't, and not every account is collectible through the collections end of it, and the client has that option, and we certainly can. We need to assure them that this is the chances are good, and present all the facts to them, and then they obviously have to give signed authorization, and they understand the process before we do any of that.
So the question is usually asked: when does a customer decide to go legal, or when should they decide to go legal, or when should the agency decide to go legal? Because there's a fine line. Obviously, the agency's been working it. Yep. So let's say we've got a client and we've worked on the collection for 3 months. We haven't gotten anywhere, just maybe got in touch with the consumer, but they haven't responded, they haven't paid. What is the time frame?
Yeah, and I think it varies. Like for instance, it could be one call. The person says, you know what, I dispute this. I don't owe it. Do what you got to do.
Take me to court.
Yeah, in some cases they'll say that, but other times it's pretty, subliminal that's what they want. You can read between the lines, especially when they use the 4-letter words after it. But
yeah,
but no, I mean, and then in some cases it's a process. We go through a collection process which escalates. We start off with collection notices and attempts to call, and it escalates to potential for legal action, and they ignore them, and in that case that could be maybe 2 or 3 month period. But then we also have to have time to do our due diligence just to make sure it's collectible. So we would need to allow time for us to, again, if the person's on, social assistance or doesn't own anything, not working, then, we're not going to recommend that to our clients, because in that case, the chances of them getting paid is very little. So,
and on that note, how successful is legal action after an agency has been through these accounts? Because what I would assume and what I know from our experience is if we can't collect it, I'm kind of skeptical. Like, how are you as a legal person or a paralegal going to collect those accounts, whereas where my team could not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I mean, when you go to the legal action stage, it's a whole different level. So now it involves well, in our estimates, they're mandated by the court to respond, or if they don't respond, there's a consequence, and we get judgment. And once you have a judgment, that changes the game. Once you have a judgment against an individual, you have the power to seize assets, garnish wages, put liens, have examinations where they're summons to appear in court, to go through a line of questioning. So that is certainly, most people would want to avoid that. So that heightens everything. And now it's at a different level. And in a lot of cases, just once we start the legal process, people become more cooperative. And we don't necessarily have to go through the process. And actually, in all honesty, the majority of it gets settled or resolved throughout the process at some point. Right. And especially if it's defended. Rarely do we actually go through a full trial. You generally, maybe I would say 5 to 10% actually go to a trial, if that. And so it is a way to, but again, we have to know that there's money at the end of the rainbow, or little pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, before we even begin. And that's the key. There's so many times we get clients that have done their own legal work, and they made a mess of it. For one thing, they didn't get the names properly. They didn't do their due diligence on their,
what is that called?
Checks.
Not proper style, or what?
The style of cause is incorrect. They don't have the proper legal entity, and or even or they get their judgment and then they say, what do we do? Matter of fact, I had one story in court where I was I was waiting for my case to come up, and a person went up in front of the judge and went through an assessment hearing, and the judge says, okay, you have your judgment, and here you go. And the guy said, oh, great. He says, where do I go cash this in for money?
Okay.
So the judge looked at him, well, you may want to get some legal advice. He just felt he could go down to the wicket, down at the court office, and,
and he'll get his
and cash it in with the money. And he was certainly.
How much is his judgment?
We're all kind of snickering in the background here, but people don't know. They really don't understand the process, and of course they rely on us being the experts to be able to lead them in the right way.
That's incredible. I've never heard that.
Yeah. Actually, it was quite funny. Yeah.
So that is funny. Tell me about the complications that can happen, because I'm sure things do come up. I mean, it's a long process. You're going through a claim, judgments or orders or hearings. Then you get an order or a judgment, whatever they call it in the specific province or states. And then you can do all kinds of things. You can garnish, you can lien, you can do different executions on these orders. Right. But what kind of complications can happen, and what is the typical complication? Yeah,
I mean, there's certainly... there are a lot of things that can happen. For right off the bat, they could defend it and have what we call a meritorious defense. They could actually have some merit to the reason why they are disputing it. So now our hats then shift. We have to then say to the client, okay, you know what? I mean, we heard your side because we're acting as your agent, but now there's been some new information here that from a legal standpoint, you may not be entitled to the monies you're seeking. So now we have to turn our hats to a mediation process. You don't just go head on to court. Hopefully, we can avoid that. You basically say, okay, listen, let's consider their case and maybe come up with some sort of middle ground or work out some solution, and that obviously saves the client money. They don't have to spend the money to go through the process. Right. And we can again use our good judgment to determine how successful they would be. So it really can, we have to sometimes change the mindset of our customers, right? Because they all think they are owed and the money is theirs. And we sometimes have to gently remind them that, you know what, there is some issues here. And in our estimation, we would recommend trying to settle this. But they may say no, and we will obviously do what our client requests. But that's one aspect. I mean, the other aspect is there could be things that change. A person may lose their job. They could go through a bankruptcy. I mean, there's things of that nature that can happen where we basically spent money and we're not going to get it back. And there's also things that can happen throughout the process where there's motions, or one common problem we have is difficulty in getting people served with documents. That's a common one, and there's a lot.
Because you got to find them, right?
Got to find them,
Yeah.
and even when you find them, sometimes they're evasive. And we have to, in some cases, use private investigators to go with the real extreme cases where you can where they have to go through the hoops, I guess, stake them out, so to speak, or whatever it takes.
Sit and watch.
Well, I've heard a story on that one. This was a process serving company.
Yeah.
And this was actually local here.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was there was a single mom with a child who was evading service all the time.
Yep.
And the process server tried to serve them, couldn't, and eventually they had to turn to another process serving company who does extreme process serving. And what they did was, I think the process server staked them out and said, okay, the mom works at a or not works, but goes to a McDonald's with the kid every afternoon. And so the process server got a job at that McDonald's.
Oh, cool.
Got the shift that the mom would be going into the McDonald's, waited for them at the counter. Mom goes up to the counter and the processor said, here's your legal documents. Quit.
And he quit.
I mean, that's the extreme, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we would have got show-up pay at least as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. In some cases, and depending on the size of the debt too, is
of course.
And
if it's worth it for the process server, right?
Yeah. And then sometimes there's a principal element in there where the client doesn't really care too much. I have one client who, if it's $300, he'll sue it, and he doesn't care.
I know who this is.
Yeah, I think you do. I won't name names, but he
should we?
He doesn't care if it costs $2,000 to collect a $300 account because he wants to make a point, and he realizes that it's a small community, and they want to know that he will go to the ends of the earth if need be.
We're talking about a waste management company, right?
We are, and very much.
I don't know anything about it.
We do.
Me.
Mike and I do.
Yeah, please tell me more.
Yeah.
We will after the podcast.
No
I
problem.
might even get a phone call afterwards. Who knows? We'll see if he's listening.
If he's listening, it would be like, Mike, don't do this. Or maybe he would, why didn't you say my name?
Yeah. Maybe so. Yeah.
We could collect sponsorship money, So, Mike, we usually
put
have
stickers up on the back wall.
Yeah.
Start taking pictures. Yeah.
We should.
Yeah. Well, why not?
Yeah. Well,
Why
you know
not?
what? And as long as the client's on board, we're on board.
Yeah, your sticker will be featured on an Instagram or Facebook post. Somebody asks, we'll tell them what your company does.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, this morning we had a meeting and we were talking about offering that in one of our packages.
Yeah,
that
why not?
You'll get on the podcast as you'll get an ad on our podcast.
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely. And it's a great way to market their business.
That's true.
And it's informative too. So
reaches a niche market.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we've got consumers listening and creditors listening, so they'll be like, I'm not going to do business with them.
I better not tell any of our secrets in case some of the debtors.
Well, actually, I mean, the podcast is, and the listeners know this, it's usually aimed at both segments, so consumers and creditors. So everybody can make their own judgments on what they're going to use, not use, or retain from the experience.
But eat the meat, spit out the bone.
That's right. Maybe we should use it as a slogan.
Yeah.
Eat the meat,
I don't think
out
you're the first
bone.
one to come up with that because I stole it myself from somewhere.
Okay.
At least you're being honest.
Well, you can take credit for it, though.
Yeah. This is trademarked right now.
TM. Mike, we usually have a section in the podcast where we talk about a collection chronicle. And I know I shut down one of yours in the past.
Yeah.
And I told you that one, so you can't use that.
Right.
But I think you've got a really interesting one that we talked about before this episode. And if you want to talk about that would be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I won't name names, but it's a famous celebrity who's fairly local, grew up in a local area here. And
he's in the U.S. now? Is that what you're saying?
He's in the U.S., a very, very successful artist.
Young man.
Whose father I had the encounter with to collect monies. And led to legal action, of course.
So even famous people owe money.
Even famous people, absolutely.
Well, I mean, it's not famous people.
It's
It's
the
like
relative
the parent
of a famous
of.
person. Yeah,
yeah, although I think he's,
Well, and he's like
well
on
known
the-
to TMZ.
he's notorious. Yeah,
This is true.
as I got interviewed by TMZ, so I certainly.
Wow, did you really?
I did.
Wow.
They actually contacted me.
Who knew that Mike was such a superstar here?
I did.
Jesus, I guess that's why you want to.
It was a long process, and I mean, we were talking about difficulties serving and things like that. Well, that one was probably one of the most difficult people to serve. Because,
Really?
He very
Evasive?
exclusive and had
Yeah.
security guards and things of that nature. So there was a private investigator that had to be involved. And let's just say they got him in the middle of the forest doing some ATVing. And, this,
Was his
private
son there with
investigator-
him?
love this.
No,
Was he
he wasn't
singing
there,
in
but
falsetto?
apparently the son had made multiple visits. But
Okay.
I did actually speak.
But did they actually serve him on an ATV? So
I
did
think
the
they-
processor drive by on another ATV or what?
I think they stopped, and then he had to be there in the wooded area to be able to do that. But he was able to discern where he was. But yeah, it was certainly an interesting encounter. We had to deal with this famous individual's lawyer,
Right.
who got involved, and he's out of Hollywood actually, and it was definitely an interesting process. They were adamant not to pay it, and we had to go right through to court and hearings and such.
So he did actually owe it then. It wasn't like well.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think at the end of the day, they just settled it to avoid publicity.
But did you mention that the actual celebrity that we're talking about was like, yeah, just pay this.
Yeah, like he certainly wanted to just pay it. Actually, a very nice fella.
Right.
And not speaking to him directly, but through his lawyer, he was very willing to just resolve it. But the father wasn't, and we had to go through the process. And at the end of the day, obviously there were reporters outside the courtroom and all
That's
this stuff.
crazy.
It got a little bit
Can you
surreal as we went into the courtroom. But at the end of the day, he came to the table and resolved it, and it pretty well died from there. But yeah, interesting. But at the end of the day, it was handed to us by somebody else who wasn't able to collect it and didn't know where to go, and they gave it to us, and we collected it. So it was definitely a feather in our cap. for
was
sure.
it like a sizable amount, or was it like?
Yeah, it was around the 15 grand range.
So it's not that big.
Yeah.
Not big, but to the people that he owed the money to, it was big.
It was big.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point it's a good thing to point out to a lot of people that come to our office to get collection services. The little money that they list, even if it's $42, to them it means the world.
Yeah.
It does.
So you might say, well, $15,000 is nothing, but to these people, like you said, I mean, it was everything. It could have been, like an annual income from a rental property,
Yeah.
something like that.
Absolutely. So you have to really
It's
look
true.
at each client from where they're at, and when we take on a collection account, we go all out. Whether it's $100 or $100,000. That's the key.
This is our advertising.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's all-
And go beyond.
yeah, that's right.
We go
We
beyond.
actually go beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
is true.
actually true. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I think that about sums it up. I know we could go on forever with all the legal questions, and there are a lot of specifics, but
Yeah.
I think the point of the exercise is there's definitely life after collection, meaning that you can still breathe life into an account
Yep.
by doing a legal action.
Absolutely.
And creditors should not be afraid to do it, because if an agency, and most agencies are, good and honest, if an agency recommends it, they've gone through all the loops and hoops and they figured out there is money to be had, and it's probably going to be successful, but you have to do your due diligence, right?
Absolutely. And I would also add too that for the client who does list it, the one question that some may come out with is why should we go to collections first? Why should we just put it into legal right away?
Right. Good question.
And I would answer by saying that in most cases we can get it collected through the collection efforts. But however, if legal action is needed because they're a client of the collection agency or go beyond in this case, there is so we share the costs. We contribute by our time and our skill levels to do legal work at minimized cost. So in actuality, the client is saving money. Going
and I think the two services complement each other because if you go into collections or put somebody in collections, you're not going to pay an upfront fee.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So you can get something for basically free.
That's right.
Yep.
Until it's collected, because then you're going to pay for the commission, but you don't have to pay upfront.
In a strange way, it kind of pays for itself, right?
Yeah. So it's it's a good investment.
Absolutely.
Whereas legal action, you have to give money up front for a retainer or for legal services and disbursements, whatnot.
Absolutely.
And so start with the collection and then go to legal.
Yep.
Not in all cases, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, you go to a lawyer, they're gonna sue whoever you tell them to, but they're not going to do their due diligence to find out even if it's worth it.
Yeah, they don't have to.
You could end up spending a lot of money.
You pay for your time. You get what you pay for.
And you find out the person's unemployed or not working or whatever, and you've just thrown that money away.
Well, and our lawyer, Andrew Brown, whenever you walk into his office, he always says, well, look at this scale. This scale is tilted. The minute that you start a legal action, you've lost because you're going to be spending money on me. That's what he says.
Yep.
So might as well try to settle it first. This is what the lawyer says.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's good advice.
Absolutely.
Yep. Proper
Very
advice.
Good. Very good.
So what about our Twitter handle? And
Well, we don't got Twitter anymore. Remember?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Brandon, our social media guy, said, "Forget about Twitter. You guys are not celebrities."
Yeah, exactly. It's true.
We're not like
I've always
Justin
said
Bieber,
Twitter.
who is a celebrity, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to say the name. Yeah.
What?
What name?
What name?
What are you talking about?
What name now?
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, so, well, as always, if you have any questions, comments about our podcast, or if you want to even send in your own chronicle to us, our email is gbpodcast@gobeyondcollect.com. And of course, we're on your social medias, Instagram and Facebook. Just look up Collection Chronicles.
And as always,
Pay or get paid.
I like it.